Hello. So this evening we are going to answer an email that I received a few days ago where somebody asked, could I record a flight from A to B for complete novices with either flying or the simulator to be able to get an aeroplane from A to B in the most simple manner possible. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use the world map to program a route in. We're going to spawn an aeroplane on the runway, and then we're going to fly a route using the autopilot and get the autopilot to do as much as we can. Okay, so let's go and get started. So we're in the simulator, we've just loaded it up. I am not going to cover configuring the controls because everybody's got different controls. But I'm just going to use the most basic controls. So all you'll need to have working is the stick, the throttles and the flap levers basically for flying the aeroplane we have in mind. So if you go and click on world map, what aeroplane do we have in mind? We're going to be flying the Cessna 172 Skyhawk that comes with all versions of the simulator. This is the one with the G1000, the glass cockpit. So we're going to be using the Cessna 172 Skyhawk. Okay. We are going to be taking off from Petaluma in California. So how do you find Petaluma? You can either type the name of it into the search or you can type the code in for it. So this gives us a bit of a sideways conversation all of a sudden. Running alongside the simulator, I have another piece of software called LittleNavMap. This is a free download off the internet. If you just search for LittleNavMap in Google and then go and download and install it and run it alongside the simulator, obviously it won't work if you're running Xbox, but this is the only bit you won't be able to use of this video if you're running an Xbox. So if you go and look in LittleNavMap, what it does is it superimposes all of the data from the simulator onto a map. So once you've got the simulator installed with any scenery or anything, you can go into the scenery library menu in LittleNavMap and load scenery, and it will basically take a copy for its own purposes. So you can see this if we go and zoom in over West Coast America. The more we zoom in, the more we see of waypoints and airfields and ILSs and all sorts of things. And we can actually plot routes in LittleNavMap, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Actually, no, let's do this first because it will make sense to visualize what the route we're going to do today. So we are going to pull up the search box in LittleNavMap and we are going to go from Petaluma, which is 069 is its ICAO code, and we can right click on that and set Petaluma as the departure airport, and you can see it's lit up yellow on the map. And if we go and look on the map here, we're going to take off from Petaluma, we're going to fly over and land at Charles M. Schulz or Sonoma Airport. So we're going to right click on Sonoma and set that as the destination. So that's rubber banded a basic route across the map. So what we would like to do is to get ourselves in line with the ILS before we even get there to keep things simple. So if I right click on Lussie, I can add that waypoint to our flight plan, and it goes now from Petaluma via Lussie over to Charles M. Schulz. Okay, so and you can see that built up on the list over here, 069 to Lussie and then KSTS. We also see this navigation plot down here showing you altitudes, so we'll be flying the whole route at about 1500 feet probably. And there you go, you can see it's figuring out if there are any hills along the way. But that's all we were really interested in this for, is just to see what the route might look like, and more importantly, we can see the ILS information. Okay, so let's go across to the simulator. How do we put this into the simulator, into the world map screen? So select departure, click in the search box. Now we can either type in Petaluma, which will bring it up, and we can click on it and it zooms the map into it, or we can type the code number in. So we'll go to our arrival airport now and we can type in KSTS, which will bring up Charles Schulz, or we could have typed Sonoma as well. So we'll click on that. So there's our basic route across the map, but you'll notice in the simulator it's missing all of those waypoint markers. Where are they? They are in here. So if you go to the More option at the bottom of the screen and then Open Filters, and then scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Fix and RNAV Position Report. Turn that on, and you can see little white dots have appeared all over the map. So close that dialog again and go back. And then if we zoom in a little bit more, they'll all light up. And you should be able to find, there's Lussie, look, there's the one we were planning on using, was there. So if I click on Lussie with the left mouse button, I can now add it to our flight plan. So we've now got a flight plan that leaves Petaluma, goes to Lussie, and then flies straight on to Sonoma. Okay, so you can see here, there's an important point here. When we chose Petaluma, it's put the aeroplane by default on the runway. We can choose a parking ramp. We're not going to. We're going to spawn on the runway. And the reason we're doing that is the aeroplane will be ready to go with the engine running. What's more, the aeroplane will already have this route programmed into its GPS system. Okay? So let's click flight and let that happen. So the simulator is now busy loading, and we can go and have a look. So the most important thing that LittleNavMap gives us, which isn't so straightforward to get hold of in the simulator, are the details of the ILS. Okay, so we're going to be flying into Petaluma, sorry, into Sonoma, and we'll follow the ILS in. Let's just find out what the weather's doing. Yeah, there's hardly any wind today, so we don't have to worry about the wind. So we can leave the weather on live weather. It won't hurt us. So the simulator shouldn't take too long to load, so we'll just give it a chance. And here it comes. So if we say ready to fly, I'm going to turn my head tracking off. I've got a head tracking device, but I want this to look as you will see it. Okay, so you can see we are sat on the end of the runway, the engine is running. I'm just going to check my recording volumes, they're looking good. Okay, so if we go and look across, you can see on the navigation display, our route is already programmed in. We can zoom out, so you've got a range knob over here. If we increase the range by rolling it with the mouse wheel, we can see the whole route. So by default in this Cessna, when you first log into it or when you first fire it up, this map will be north oriented. You can change that. So what you can do is press the menu button on the navigation display, and it pulls up this dialog with map settings flashing. If we just get rid of this yoke by clicking on the stalk so we can see all the buttons, we'll also do the same over here. Click on the stalk of the yoke and make it disappear. What we can do is press enter on map settings, so press the enter button, and then we can use this outside knob on the FMS knob at the bottom right to scroll down, and then when we get to orientation we can roll the inner knob, which will change its setting, and we could say track up or even heading up and press enter. And the map has now spun around, so we can press clear now to get rid of the dialog. So the map is now facing the direction we are going. Yeah, so we just need, so there's the compass rose, so we get a much easier way of navigating just by looking at the map. Okay, so before we do anything then, we're going to familiarize ourselves with some of these buttons and what they do and some of the instruments. So on the left side of this screen we have got the indicated airspeed. So that is actually measuring the air rushing past and hitting this pipe. So that air pressure tells the aeroplane how fast it is going through the air, and that will be indicated here in nautical miles per hour. On the right hand side we've got the altitude above the ground, or sorry, above sea level. Notice we're at 240 at the moment. Now I've just pressed B and it has suddenly changed. So by the same token, the altitude is read by the air pressure. When you get into the aeroplane it may not be calibrated. So by pressing B on the keyboard I have calibrated, and you can see it there, there's the measurement in inches. I've calibrated the air pressure for the altimeter so it's accurate to the airfield I'm at. Yeah, so we are at about 90 feet above sea level here. Okay. Down here, this circular instrument with a compass around it is a horizontal situation indicator. Okay, so it's a clever version of this. This is a whiskey compass. which obviously you can look at to see which direction you're going. This has a little aeroplane in the middle, meaning the aeroplane's going this way, so the direction you're going is always at the top of the compass, and is obviously shown by the angle here as well. But notice there's a line on this horizontal situation indicator, or HSI. There's a line through it. If you have a magenta line, it's showing the GPS system, or the lines it's showing are representing the track on the GPS system. So if you look, the route on the GPS goes through our aeroplane and directly out in front of us, through our aeroplane directly out in front of us. Okay, and you'll notice there's a course knob over here with the triangle. So this is the course. If we try and spin it when we're in GPS mode, it doesn't do anything. So what's this all about? If we press the CDI button, because you may load into the aeroplane and may find this is in a different mode. The CDI button steps between localizer mode, localizer 2, and GPS. So localizer 1, localizer 2, GPS. The reason we need to know about that is while we are flying point to point following the route that we programmed in, we will keep this in GPS mode. When we get to the ILS to land on the runway, we have to switch to localizer mode. Yeah, so we're switching over to the navigation radios, not the GPS. So the navigation radios are up here. There's 2 of them, which is why you have localizer 1 and 2. That corresponds with nav 1 and nav 2. And to tune these in, and we can do this now, we can go and have a look at the ILS for Sonoma. 109.3 is the frequency, 321 degrees is the magnetic track to the runway. Okay, so if we press the middle of the nav knob, it will flick the focus between nav 2 and nav 1. So we're doing this all on the ground, so we don't have to worry about it when we're in the air. So we want this to say 109.3. So the big knob does the integers, so we'll roll it backwards using the mouse wheel. And the small knob does the decimals, so we can roll it forwards and it will go off through 0 and back around. So 109.3, but this is a standby frequency, it's not the active frequency. We can flick that over to become the active frequency. So I'm going to turn it back again so nothing's tuned in. And you'll see it, actually you might not see it change because we're on the ground, but we'll try it. Yeah, nothing has appeared yet. This will come to life when we're in the air. Obviously, because it's a radio, the ground interferes with it. You have to be at some altitude for radio instruments to work properly. Okay, so we'll press CDI for the moment and just show GPS. One thing we could do just before we get there, we talked about the heading of the runway as well, didn't we? So we've already tuned the localizer, the nav1 radio in. It would be good if our course knob was ready to go on 321 degrees. So remember that triangle one is the course. There's a little diagram there explaining that. And we can pull that round. So if we roll the course knob, we can set it to, notice we've got the instrument here, 321 degrees. So all we're really doing here is doing everything in advance. So when we're flying, we have nothing left to do. Okay, so remember, we're going to be flying GPS though to begin with. So we change the CDI mode back. When it says CDI, what it means is Course Deviation Indicator. That's the line in the middle of the HSI. If we are off to the left or right of the track that you can see on the map, that line will slide to the left and right, meaning the line on the map is to the left or the right of us. So we can chase the line. We'll see that happen as we fly out. So just before we get started, let's do a quick recap of the buttons on the navigation system then and the autopilot. So the one thing we haven't covered yet is heading. So as we roll the heading round, you'll notice this marker goes. We can fly the autopilot in various modes. So there's heading mode, nav mode, approach mode, vertical navigation mode, altitude hold mode, vertical speed mode, and a lot of these can be used in combination with each other. You've got flight level change mode down at the bottom as well. So we're not going to worry about too many of them today. What we are going to worry about though is saying as soon as we switch the autopilot on, we would like the aeroplane to follow our track that we've programmed in. So we're going to press Nav and it will show GPS up at the top. So this line here will tell us what program the autopilot is on. So GPS mode means the aeroplane will steer left and right to follow the track that we programmed in. If we want the aircraft also to climb or descend to a given height, we have to tell it what height to climb to. So up at the top right, we've got at the bottom left, sorry. You get different layouts of these knobs on different aeroplanes. At the bottom left on the Cessna, you've got the altitude. So if you watch the altitude ribbon here, you can change the target altitude. So we want to fly to 1500. So the big knob does thousands, the small knob does hundreds. So we can say, take us up to 1500 feet. Okay? And then the next thing for us to decide after choosing a target altitude is the rate at which we want to get there. Now this is a huge subject because there's lots of ways you can program this to do it. Today we are just going to use vertical speed mode because it's the most simple, but it's actually dangerous because the aeroplane will blindly climb at the rate we've told it, regardless of speed or power. So we'll say vertical speed, and you can see it says VS up here, and then you can press the nose up and nose down buttons repeatedly to change the rate in hundreds of feet per minute. So we can click nose up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's going to climb to 1500 feet at 500 feet per minute. Now you should find you can get away with about 700 feet per minute in good weather in the Cessna 172 at full power. Okay, so we're going to climb to 1500 feet a minute at we're going to climb to 1500 feet at 700 feet a minute. And this has all been programmed in, look. And the Alt S means it will capture that altitude when it gets to it. So it will stop climbing all on its own. In terms of steering, we're in GPS mode, so as long as we're close to the track, when we switch the autopilot on, it will make sense of it and steer left or right to get us exactly onto the track. So, should we go try that out? I'm going to press F to center the view up. I'm actually going to press space as well, and then hold the right mouse button down and drag down with the mouse, and that lets us see down, just so we get a better vantage point of what's going on. And I'll zoom us in a little bit just so we see the map, or sorry, the display here. So come off the parking brake and push the throttle all the way forwards. And now I'm having to steer gently to hold the center line. I've got my simulator set to maximum realism, so all of the forces are in play with moving the aeroplane around on the runway. So you've got torque, you've got a thing called the slipstream effect happening, you've got the crosswind from any wind that's hitting the airplane happening. So as I come through 60 or 70 knots, I should be able to gently rotate with no flaps, and the airplane is in the air. And we're flying out. You can see we have got a small amount of crosswind pushing us off the runway direction. So we'll just correct for that and gently climb out, just a few degrees, about 7.5 degrees is fine. So while we're climbing out, I can trim the aeroplane, so if you've got some trim controls you can use them. But if not, just press the autopilot button now. So AP has lit up and the plane is flying itself. It's climbing, it's just coming down, look, it's looking to get to about 700 feet a minute. It's climbing towards 1500 feet a minute. The speed, the aeroplane is still accelerating. So we can obviously control our speed by power, just as we can control climb rate with power as well. So notice there's a marker here that appears above or below. That's whether you're accelerating or decelerating based on the power you have set. So you can watch on the map and see us climbing out towards that waypoint. So yes, as I said earlier, we are in GPS mode. So let's go and try something else. We can turn the heading bug around and you can see it moving. We can click the heading bug in the middle and it will center it up on the direction we're going. Okay, if we were to press heading mode now on the autopilot, so I'll do it now, ready, now, it says heading here now, so the autopilot is no longer following the GPS track, it is following the direction of the heading bug. So if we were to turn the heading bug away from the course, so we turned left and the aeroplane's turning left, look, watch what happens to the CDI, the course deviation indicator. It's basically saying the track is off to our right. Yeah? So if we zoom in on this down here, it's only a little bit away, but you can see it's indicating that we're away from the track. So we can move the heading bug back, put ourselves on an intercept course, so we'll wait for the aeroplane to turn. We're at 1500 feet, by the way, look. The aeroplane stopped climbing or diving. So I'm going to pull the throttle back a little bit now. We're not in a hurry. Obviously now we've leveled out. If we leave the throttle high, we'll start to overspeed. So look, we're back now on an intercept course with the nav, with the GPS course. If we press nav again, it will go back to flying by GPS. Notice it hasn't done anything sudden because we were close to the track anyway. But if you are kind of parallel with the track, it may take, a stronger angle. If you're some distance away from it, it will make its own intercept course up to get back to the track. Usually it's between about 30 and 45 degrees depending on the aeroplane. So you can see up here as well, estimated time to the next waypoint. You've also got your ground speed measured by the GPS. Okay, so we'll just hang on and wait for it for a moment. You can also see distance here, look. 0.2 miles, 0.1 miles, and it will change, watch the leg change colour. So the magenta leg is the next leg. So we've now got 12 miles to go until we get to our next waypoint. So if we go and actually look out the window, we can see there's a runway in the far distance. That's where we're going. So we're flying GPS at the moment. So remember, we could go and center the heading bug up the direction we're going and go to heading mode on the autopilot. So the autopilot's just carrying on the direction we're going regardless. But now we're on heading mode, we can switch the CDI over. So click CDI and it's showing localizer. Remember, we've already tuned this into the ILS. Yeah, we've already set the course to the runway direction. 321 degrees. So the interesting thing now is not only do we have this, we also have a glide slope gauge that's turned up alongside the attitude indicator here. So this line works the same as with GPS. If we're on heading mode, remember, or actually no, we're still on heading mode. If we press nav while we're in localizer mode, it says localizer up here. Yeah? So the airplane is going to try and center up the CDI all on its own. But if we go back to heading mode, we can steer away from it. I'll just do it to prove it to you. So we'll fly away 20 degrees from it. And you'll see the course deviation indicator, or CDI, is sliding off to one side. So we'll come back towards it again. So I'm turning the heading bug. So the whole point of this is you don't actually have to be able to see outside, but I'm just showing you how this instrumentation works, what it's showing us. So we're tuned into the ILS, remember. If this was just a VOR station and not ILS, we would not have the glide slope, but we would have this part of it. Okay, so let's press nav, and it will steer left on its own. Look, it knows it's just overshot the line, and it will straighten itself up. So the airplane's flying down the track. This is the GPS track, remember, on this map. We can zoom out a little bit so we can see the destination. There it is. So if you see the green arrow, that's the localizer. The magenta arrow is the GPS. and you can switch the modes by pressing the CDI button. So in a moment, this small diamond you can only see half of will come down the glide slope meter. What it means is there's an imaginary line through the sky at 3 degrees on this runway. Different runways have different angles. Most of them are 3 degrees on flat ground. It's kind of a standard. If you imagine an invisible line down to the runway that your aeroplane is supposed to follow to get safely down to the runway, this yellow diamond, or green diamond, sorry, represents where we are in position in relation to that invisible line. So at the moment we're flying along level at 1500 feet, and the line is out in front of us somewhere. So we are below it at this altitude, this far away. So we are below the line. So when this comes down, when it gets to the middle, it means we are on the line. If it goes below the halfway point, it means we are above the line. So we essentially can chase that diamond. But we don't have to. We can get the autopilot to do it. We can use approach mode. So if I press approach, you can see it's lit up saying GS for glide slope. Here it comes, look. We're getting close to it being at the right distance for the altitude. So there's that line is just in front of us, that invisible line down to the runway, and we're getting closer and closer to it. When we hit it, the aeroplane will start descending all on its own. So watch our vertical speed. I'll try and get the view to show both. Watch our vertical speed and watch the altitude when this gets into the middle, because we are in approach mode on the ILS. So ILS is tuned in, the course is set, there it goes. Glide slope is lit up and is descending. There goes the vertical speed and the height's coming off. So the aeroplane is basically flying itself down to the runway. So no flying skills required for this, just some knowledge of how the radios work and the autopilot buttons. So we're going to obviously speed up because we're going downhill, so I'm going to cut the throttle back. We need to be going slow enough. I'm going to go all the way back to idle. So we're essentially gliding. So you can see the speed is coming off. That rate of change marker is showing the rate at which the speed is coming off. We need to get into the white area on the indicated airspeed ribbon, which is the area that is safe to deploy the flaps. So we can open the engine again and we can start deploying flaps. Obviously once we deploy flaps, the aeroplane is causing a lot more drag, so we'll have to temper that with more throttle. So we go for full flaps. We can actually look from outside because the aeroplane's flying itself, remember. So you can see there's the flaps. So the idea of flaps, if you are a complete beginner with aviation, is the aeroplane can fly more slowly with the flaps extended. They allow the wing to generate far more lift, but at the expense of drag. Okay, so I'm now using the throttle to control our speed on the way in. So we don't want to get much less than about 55 knots.
500.
So now the altitude is being read out beneath us. If you want to center your view up quickly and easily, you just press the F key on the keyboard. So if we press F and then space, and then we can use the right mouse button and drag down, and use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out just to get a nice view arranged. So the airplane's coming in on its own. I haven't even got my hand on the joystick. I'm just keeping an eye on the airspeed there and using the power. So we're on autopilot, we're on localizer mode or landing mode. We're on the glide slope, you can see the glide slope there. We're on the localizer, so localizer is left to right, glide slope is up or down. And it's coming in completely automatically onto the runway. So I'm going to let the aeroplane fall into the runway. Normally you would flare, but I'm going to show that you can actually get away with this. It will flare a small amount in landing mode, but not as much as if you did it by hand. And again, once we get just above the runway, I'm going to cut the throttle to idle. So it's bringing the nose up now. You can see it happening. I've cut the throttle to idle. And we just drift into the ground. Notice the autopilot has stayed on. So we have to go and press the AP button down here, and it starts flashing, which means it's been switched off. So now I am in control of the aeroplane. So we'll get it back onto the centre line, and we can use the wheel brakes. We can raise the flaps, and we can steer off the runway. So there you go. A crash beginner's course in flying between 2 points on the map with the basic Cessna that does have a nice autopilot and a nice GPS system and a nice nav radio system for using with ILS. So let's just bring the airplane to a halt and put the parking brake on so we can have a talk. If you use a program like LittleNavMap, and it's not the only program around, there's also Navigraph you might have heard of. If you use something like LittleNavMap, you can go looking around on the map and you can see which airfields have got ILS, which will help you enormously if you're just starting out. Or you can just go and pick any old airfield anywhere, but even if you're just drawing your route on the map, say we wanted to go there next, we can right click on the airfield and append. We can go there next and we can right click and we can append. So you can make your route as long as you want. Or you can start from scratch and do a new flight plan, say no. So we could say right click from here, set that as our departure, right click on that one, set that as our destination, and just go and fly that one if you wanted to. And obviously it's going to give you the direction to fly, so you can just hand fly it by the compass if you want. So the idea being, you can take over more and more of flying the aeroplane yourself as you get more comfortable with doing it, or maybe trying out the different modes on the autopilot and the guidance system. But remember, if you load in via the world map screen, the route will already be in here. If you want to progress on to programming the map, the route into the map for yourself, you can do it in the aeroplane just as you would in the real one. You can press the FPL or flight plan button and it pulls up this form, and you can press the FMS knob and move the cursor around and fill in the fields. So there's our departure airfield, for example, that we've just done. There's the waypoint we went to, and there's the destination. So again, I've got whole videos on how this system works. You can find them in my channel. But just to give you that option that as you move forwards with the simulator, you can take on more and more different subject areas around the aeroplane of different elements of it. And then obviously towards the end you get into how to fly a plane properly. And, you know, regardless of operating an aeroplane, or being able to operate it and being able to fly it correctly are two completely different things. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed that. So if you are just starting out, don't worry about using autopilot all the time. Don't worry about using the map screen rather than programming the flight computers yourself. If all else fails, there's an AI pilot up at the top of the screen. So if you open him up while you're in the air and tell him where you want to get to, he'll take over flying the aeroplane for you. Yeah? So there's lots and lots of toys in the simulator to play with. Have fun. I think that's the main thing. Just make sure you're having fun. If it gets to be a bind, then don't worry about it. You know, do something else. Go do something else for a few hours. Anyway, I'll put my yokes back on. I'll see you again soon.